And I've hit record on OBS.
Hello and welcome to the podcast.
Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the latest episode of the Steam Sentinels podcast, episode 2, the $100 question. I am your host, Mellow on line 1, and I am joined by Ratchet. Ratchet, how are we doing this week?
I am very tired. Please help me.
Any highlights from this week? Anything you want to talk about?
Oh yeah, for sure. I've been playing a lot of Grand Theft Auto 5 in anticipation for Grand Theft Auto 6, and a really fun one. I lost my job. As in, to be fair, I didn't lose my job. The business went out of business, so that was fun. That was a good start to my week.
That's really bad. That's awful. But what you're saying is people should start donating to the Steam Sentinels Patreon so I can start paying you both for these podcast episodes, is what you're saying with that.
They should. And if they're looking for programmers, they should also hire me.
Yes. I highly recommend Ratchet. You've been working on a new bot for our server this week, as well, to try and get the forum alerts being pushed into our Discord server, which I think we really need. Did you finish that, did you say? Because I got a message from you with a snippet, and I'm like, I assume this means he's finished it.
Yeah, if you have a look in our, we have a little test channel for bots and stuff. Yeah, there's a post in there, so it gets the web page for our forum posts in an INI file, gets all the latest info. If there's any posts that are newer than the last time it checked, then it just pulls those in. The formatting's a little funky, but it's pretty cool for now. It'll be up on the server, which means you should join the server.
Yes, join the Discord server. Link to our link tree in the description or somewhere like that. And we're also joined by Survival Death. Survival Death, hello, how are you?
I'm here. That's how I am. I'm kidding. I'm not disappointed to be here. It's funny though. Ratchet sent me a message yesterday. Well, technically last night. Showing me a snippet of the INI file, asking me if I understood it, and I looked at it and I could see the parallels to the INI file I would mess around with for Command and Conquer Red Alert 2. And I'm like, this is something that I feel like even if Ratchet disappeared tomorrow, it's enough for me to understand on how to screw around with it, to understand what does what, and get a better understanding with it, after a little bit of time. It does not feel like an alien language to me, is what I'm saying.
Well, I'm pleased you felt that way, because he sent me the same message and I had absolutely no idea about what I was looking at. I couldn't even figure out where to start with any of it. So I'm pleased that if Ratchet goes AWOL, you're around to pick up the pieces.
It's funny because Ratchet's after he asked me whether or not I could understand it, he's like, sick, because I'm about to, in 4 hours from dumping all of this on Mellow. Oh. But yeah, I recognize a lot of stuff there where in the INI file it tells you what does what, what number equals what when you set up definitions and whatnot. I remember screwing around with that in Red Alert 2, so that's why it's okay. It's foreign-ish, but it's enough to where I could mess around with it and get a better understanding.
Neat. Have you been playing anything fun this week?
I've been playing Warframe.
Still playing Warframe?
Yeah, it's still fun. There's all kinds of stuff to do. I asked a friend of mine what she thought, and she said that she's watched people play Warframe, but to her it's a bit overwhelming, which I get that. I also finally was able to get my Oblivion Remastered working, so...
Had it not been working?
Well, so my computer now that I'm running, which is my newer custom-built one, or actually it is my only custom-built one, so the SSD and the hard drive on it, 6 months ago or so, or a few months ago, I should say, just went kaput. And I ordered new SSD stuff, but I was too lazy to install it, and so I was on my older PC until the graphics driver on there all then went kaput. So then I'm like, well, now I really have to fix the newer one because I was too lazy to do it before. But now that I did, and then when I installed Oblivion, it was just crashing on me. The funny thing is I had to just reinstall it again in order for it to in order to fix it, or at least verify the files. It's weird that I didn't install it correctly the first time. But I've been just getting into tinkering around with modding that, but I've also been playing Just Cause 3 modded, which is fun because I love modding the grappling hook mechanic to like quadrupling its grapple distance so I could just grapple between islands.
Is Oblivion remastered? Because I've been contemplating picking that up, but I'm always like put off a little bit by the price. How worthwhile do you think it is at full price?
So full price, I think it depends on like how much you love the original Oblivion is going to kind of mirror your willingness to get it. Like right now it's on sale. Um I mean, it's 20% off. And then there's the deluxe edition which adds some stuff that I'm not even sure whether or not I've actually encountered that stuff yet content-wise. So I don't know. Yeah, I think you can live without necessarily doing that. That being said, I don't know how many of the mods uh, only, let's say, mod for that, or if most mods are available for just the base edition. That being said, there's been a lot of recent criticism because of the past few months, the updates they've put out supposedly have broken things, like more bugs and whatnot, and so yeah. Um,
Did something similar not happen with I can't remember which game it was, but like either Skyrim or Fallout 4, where
Both
there was an
Skyrim and Fallout 4, but the difference there is that in both of those, well, in Skyrim's case, they added a lot of the previous Creation Club stuff into the game
for the anniversary edition.
for the Anniversary Edition. Uh, and when they also did that too, it essentially broke a ton of mods because of, I guess, how the file structure is on the back. Ratchet would have a better idea on how to describe that than I would. Even if he doesn't know how Bethesda stuff works, at least from a developer standpoint of what happens when a game updates and why a mod may no longer work when a game updates.
I don't know. It's
No,
weird.
you let
It
me
depends
down.
on the project, right? Yeah. Because with like Unreal Engine, which is what I primarily work in, the file system doesn't change and the configs don't change. It's weird. I can only speculate on what it could be, but I don't want to do that. But I do want to hit you with a thing, Mel. I don't think your computer will run. I don't think your computer will run the Oblivion remaster because it requires RTX or the AMD equivalent.
Excuse me. My computer runs more than you think it does. I can get away with running Skyrim Special Anniversary Game of the Year Edition, whatever it is, at ultra settings. I'll have you know.
You can run that on a potato. No, it's because what happened with Oblivion Remastered, it uses Nanite and Lumen, which are Unreal lighting and mesh rendering things that I won't go into because we'll be here all day. But long story short, it requires a pretty hefty graphics card, and even my 3080 Ti gets a heavy performance drops playing it. I've stopped playing it because the frame rate's so bad.
Was it only recently? Was it after they put out the first few patches that you stopped playing?
Yeah, it was the initial release and post patch, because I was like, it's the same with Borderlands 4. I'm like, I really like Borderlands 4 as well, but they both run so poorly. They both hit like 30-40 FPS, and I'm like, I literally have like modified the INI files. I've stripped out all the stuff I know can cause performance issues in Unreal 5, and it still runs horribly. I can't play this. It's like, I can't play this until they patch this.
Yeah, Angry Joe actually dropped his initial rating down by a point because of performance issues.
Is that for Borderlands 4?
Yeah. Initially, it was going to be a 7 out of 10. And, part of his, because he enjoyed a lot of stuff with it, like the gunplay and whatnot, but he honestly just couldn't care for the characters or the story.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think Borderlands as a franchise, it kind of has a formula that works well. Where it's like its general gameplay loop in a way is addicting, like in terms of you're looting all these weapons and the boss fights and just everything works so well naturally. But yeah, it's like you said, the things that can like fuck up in between different series is the story. But I mean, to be honest, I've never really played Borderlands for its story so much. Like the characters are great, but I mean the story itself I find quite
Well, and
generic.
that's part of his thing too, is that he also just couldn't he couldn't care about the characters. And the thing is with Borderlands, the nature of the games is you're going to play through it at least a second time, if not multiple times, one for each of the different characters that you can play. So you're going to be rehearing a lot of dialogue again. Now, one way to go about this that a lot of games do is being able to skip past all that stuff. Borderlands, at least in 1 and 2, did not allow you to skip dialogue. I've not played 3 yet. I've played 5 minutes of 3, which I count as essentially not playing it. I don't know how 3 is, and I don't know how 4 is in terms of if you can skip any of that. I just assume that they never did that because I think they're hoping that people like the characters and whatnot enough to not need to put that in there. Even though I'd argue Borderlands 3, from the reaction of people, probably could have used a skip dialogue button. But the thing is, the point being is that you will be replaying it multiple times over the span of potentially of multiple years, going back with friends and whatnot. And so if the characters or if the story is insufferable, it makes you less likely to want to do that. Which is why, like, I know a lot of people who've got multiple playthroughs of Borderlands 1 and 2, and will go back every few years to replay through that. Because they really enjoyed the story and dialogue, especially for Borderlands 2. Handsome Jack was a really good villain, who had some really funny lines.
My process with not just Borderlands but any RPG is I will launch it up and play it. I'll play 100 hours, not finish the game because I've just been too busy doing side quests. Then I'll leave the game for 3 months, come back, and I'm like, I can't just pick up where I left off. I've got to start again. So I'll start again, don't finish the main quest, do a bunch of side quests. Some of them I've repeated from the first playthrough, leave it again, come back, rinse and repeat, just over and over. I mean, pretty much my whole Skyrim playtime on Steam is pretty much just me doing that. I still don't know how Skyrim ends. I don't know how it ends. I've never watched the ending. I've never gotten to the ending. I might make that part of my 2026 bucket list. And please don't spoil it for me, SVD. I know you'll have probably seen it like 20 times or something.
Spoiler alert, Snape kills Dumbledore.
Shocking.
I
know. Okay. Let's move on.
You wake up back in the cart from the beginning.
You're finally awake.
It just loops on itself. You're like, no, you can never finish this fucking game.
Someone should make a mod for that if that doesn't already
there
exist.
probably is one out there for that.
I only caught half of SVD's talk about Borderlands as well because I realised halfway through I had a panic because my Audacity just randomly stopped recording, and I realised it was because my keyboard was slightly leaning on another button on my second keyboard. It's like, oh no!
A second keyboard?
Yeah, because it's a laptop. Like, it's a laptop mount, and I've used like an external keyboard, and I've mounted it on top to give myself some more desk space.
I love that SVD and I both saw you with just 2 whole keyboards on your desk. Laptop.
Yeah, I've got 2 massive one for each monitor.
Yeah.
So that'll be fun for me in editing, trying to sync those back up part way through. But anyway, let's move on to why we have gathered here today. And that is for 2 topics. Yes, we have 2 fabulous topics. We're going to be picking up a lot of this from what we talked about last week. We're going to be talking about the hashtag PolishOurPrices movement, which we ran out of time for last week. And we're also going to talk about the most recent Steam Sentinels article, which our administrator Kath wrote this week. Kindly, because, well, I happened to be ill this week as well. Still am a bit ill, which might be why I'm sounding a little bit stuffy. So apologies for that. But he wrote it because he felt like he wanted to write about it, and it worked because, hey, I'm not in a mood to write an article this week. I'm feeling awful, so go wild. So we'll be talking about that as well. where he made the case as why Steam needs to up their $100 fee for submissions on games. But we'll get to both those. We're going to start off with the PolishOurPrices movement. So I'll give a little bit of background. So this is a movement that's kind of been around for, I want to say, about 2 years, but it's only been picking up steam, pun intended, the last couple of weeks. So it dates back to, in 2022, Steam released a newsfeed update talking about them updating how their regional pricing works. And basically what they were saying was the currencies that are adjusted for the local economies, making it fairer for game pricing, game monetization across the world. In theory, that's a fantastic thing. Making sure that nowhere really pays more than anywhere else, and making sure it's adjusted for certain economies, because certain economies pay a certain level different. If you come here to work in the UK, you might get paid more than, say, somewhere like, I don't know, Azerbaijan maybe. But the key thing was in this post was that Steam made a promise to do annual reviews, because currencies and economies can change by the year, or even in cases like the UK economy by the day. So at the time, Poland in particular, their economy was going through some trouble. They were going through some turbulence. Their economy was generally classed as weak in 2022 when these changes were rolled out by Steam. So regional prices were set higher compared to real world wages. But then you fast forward to this year in particular, and this was some maths that I was digging up while I was speaking to Kath about this issue. Poland's wages are up nearly 38% since 2022, which is one of the fastest in Europe. But Steam's pricing for games in Poland have remained the same since 2022. Polish games are still paying up to 31% more than games in the United States, basically. So I was speaking with Kath about this issue, and he was saying that, it can be a myriad of things. It might not just be the value of the currency. It can be how much people are earning for their job. But then obviously when you look at the figures in terms of how much Poland users are earning, it's up 38%, like I mentioned. And then you've also combined that with their economic recovery. So you've got improved economy, and you've also got better wages. But nothing's rebalanced. Nothing's kind of equilibrated against itself. So from that problem, there was a movement that was established called #PolishOurPrices. There will be a few links in the description that I remember to put in that will lead you to a website that's been set up by users in Poland that are pushing for two things. They're both using the website to raise awareness about the issue. They've also got a few Steam curators. I think they've got 4 or 5, where they basically tag games and they say whether these games are appropriately priced in Poland or they're not, because obviously game developers can override Steam's suggested regional pricing system if they want to. So the group, kind of what they do is they're trying to place some pressure on Valve to basically actually do a review on Poland's prices, because Poland are still paying too much compared to what they should be paying. And they're also contacting game developers individually to request, and publishers to request that they review the game prices outside of the automated ones that Steam set for them. So, I mean, that's pretty much it in a nutshell. So I'm more than happy to pass it off over to you both, however you want to tackle this. Do you think that the responsibility primarily lies with Valve to have a look at this and review their regional pricing? Or is it more so, do you think there's maybe something else that we're not considering as to why Valve haven't really updated this in 3 years?
If I could take a stab at it, my guess is that they don't know like how stable something is. So what I mean is that, let's say it hits a recovery point, right, in terms of the economy, whatever conversion rate that is worldwide. Who's to say how long that's going to last? right? But that being said, I do feel like after some amounts of time, if it stayed stable at a certain like pace or rate or gotten better, I feel like at that point, something needs to be done. However, the other thing to consider too is going to be how many different currencies there are slash countries, and how Valve determines, okay, it's safe to now update the currency conversion rate for the developers that rely on our automatic system, right? Um, but like I don't know if it's in their forefront of their mind though, right? Because they're doing all kinds of other stuff.
Yeah, because I mean, there was a few other countries like Argentina and Turkey, for example. They got given some price breaks when their economies collapsed to still in an attempt to make games affordable during some harder economic times. But it seems that Poland hasn't seen relief now that theirs has recovered. And I couldn't really find any other examples of when like the prices have been set high and then Steam's made the regional pricing come down for that economy. I've only ever seen them like go up and then they've pretty much stayed up. Ratchet, do you have any thoughts on them, on the whole topic as a well in its entirety?
Not really. I know on the back end it's fairly automated. I've only done a few times for the app. Anything that I've had a hand in that I have the ability to update the price in, I just hit the update button and then just apply it. I'll have a quick look at the currencies I know, but you know, it's kind of hard to look at currencies I don't know. Like, you're both based in the UK and America, so I know the price of stuff there because I have to have stuff shipped from and to there. But outside of that, it's kind of, yeah, as a developer, it's kind of hard to guess the prices. Plus, there's like, I don't know how many currencies Steam supports these days. It's really hard to actually go and check all those individually, which is where like having
which was my point.
Having groups come in and like say to you, "Hey, your pricing is ruined in like Brazil." You're like, "Oh, really?" And you go and have a look at the conversion rate, and you're like, "Oh my god, that's like $200. Why is my game $200 like dollars in Brazil? What the hell?" It's like stuff like that where groups. Yeah.
Which is why, like, the thing is, if you're a developer and you use Steam and you use that system, it's very much a you set it and forget it thing. There might be only one person in the audience that might understand what the hell I'm referencing with that phrase.
I don't even know what you're referencing.
I know I don't expect either of you, because it was an infomercial that used to come on before the Saturday morning cartoons when I was little. And that was it was essentially an oven at the time, but it was an oven with a timer, and the whole catchphrase of that presentation is you set it and forget it. I know, wild times to have a timer on something like that.
Wild times for that kind of reference as well.
Yeah, I can't help it because it just sticks. It's just stuck in my mind since then. But that it's Ronco Products for anyone that wants to look it up. That's at least the company that made whatever the hell the oven was called for that.
That'll be the first thing that I go and watch as soon as this podcast has finished.
Sponsor us, Ronco.
Don't mention their name until they've paid us.
I mean, the founder passed away years ago.
Apparently, well, I don't care.
Exactly.
I don't care if he's not going to give us a brand deal. Nah, stuff him. How influential do you think that this group could? How much influence, sorry, do you think this group could hold? Because I mean, from what I've seen, they seem to have some success stories. Like I think they contacted Pocket Pay, developers of Palworld, and they adjusted their regional pricing in response to a flurry of emails that they got from Polish users citing the incorrect regional pricing that Valve have on their end. But then as well, I think it's obviously it's a massive burden on developers because, you know, you're having your inbox blown up by users complaining that a regional pricing hasn't been set because of an automated system. I still think a lot of the onus comes down to just Valve probably need to review something there, because if you've got a community that's being formed to exclusively call about this issue, which, I mean, fair play to them, because, I mean, I joined their Discord server literally just a few days ago, and it's like they've got a massive operation going on for this now. They're sharing in their Discord server, they're sharing across their Steam communities, talking about this. There's just been a few news articles gone up, and again, they've been doing this for 2 years, on a small scale, but it's only been getting some more mainstream coverage now. Do you think that Valve might respond to this in some way? Because part of me thinks they will, part of me thinks they won't, because I would have thought that something as fundamental as an entire country is paying too much for their games would probably have flagged up to them at some point. Or is this maybe more an unconscious decision that they're thinking it'll be an error, and they've just somehow ignored the issue for, well, yeah, it'll be 3 years now. But I'm not sure what to really think about it.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you what Valve are thinking, but yeah, I think on the developers' point, the more developers they flag it to, the better. Like, again, like I said before, if I don't know about something, I'm not going to be fixing it because I know about it. Whereas if there's forum posts, if I jump into, because all the forums I'm a part of, all the games I've worked on, I'm part of the forums, and if anyone posts on them, then I get informed about it. And if I see stuff like that, I'm going to go and have a look at it, you know? I'm not just going to be like, haha, you guys have to pay 3 times as much. As an Australian, it's like, oh, I know that feeling. It sucks. Let me go and fix that for you. Because I don't want, like, I want you to buy my game and play it and have fun. Like, you have fun, I get money. But if you're paying 4 times or whatever the conversion rate is on Steam's default right now, fair that you're not buying game. But yeah, I don't know what Valve are thinking. They might just not know about it, because, like, I think the problem is people don't think that Valve are so heavily inundated with, like, the amount of stuff that they are. You gotta remember, there's how many billion Steam users at this point?
There's a few. I don't think it's quite billions, but I'm sure it's at hundreds of millions.
Yeah, 38.
Oh, it's only 38.
Yeah, sorry, I'm very tired, so I'm not translating that number. But long story short, yeah, it's a thing that comes down to they have so many people hammering them all the time with messages, even scammers. You know, it's really hard to kind of raise your hand in the crowd when there's not like 1,000 people in the crowd, when there's like, you know, 38 million people in the crowd.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which is why it's hard to get, I think, anything through to them that needs to be changed. That's why it takes essentially a lot of bad press, a lot of fuss to be kicked up for them to take notice and actually do something about. Especially if it's going to be a reputation thing.
Yeah, I mean, you just need to look at stuff like Active Shooter and
Okay.
I don't. Yeah, well, I was gonna say I don't think I can say that game name on YouTube, but yeah, go ahead. I might bleep it.
Fine. Fine. You can leave this one in. Grape Day.
There we go. That's better. Yes, Grape Day. Yeah, because I mean, even with Active Shooter, like, I mean, those 2 instances in particular, I find so fascinating. Anyone that's listening that maybe doesn't know or doesn't remember, there was 2 games, and I personally kind of hold these as kind of fundamentals as to what changed Steam's content approvals over the years. Active Shooter was basically a school shooting simulator that was set to launch on Steam, I want to say 2018 sort of time. And, you know, I think it was releasing shortly after the Sandy Hook shooting. And a lot of parents of children that unfortunately died in that incident had seen this game was about to release, and they thought it was very distasteful. There was like online petitions wanting it removed from Steam, being refused shipping. And it was quite a difficult position, I think, for Valve to be in that instance, because I mean I looked at the game, and I think quite a few people in our sort of sphere looked at the game, and we just saw it as it was an asset flip that was just trying to be really offensive to garner rage bait sales, is kind of what I saw it as. It's kind of one of those things where it's like, I think it's often, in cases of those sorts of games, I think it's just best ignored and don't give it the light of day, because I think in games like that, any publicity is good publicity, because I think that sort of publicity was what it was after. But then Valve kind of got a little bit of good luck come their way, because, well, I say good luck come their way, they'd actually found that the game Active Shooter was being made by a gentleman called Atberdiev, who was a game developer that they had previously banned from Steam, but he'd actually circumvented his ban to post that game.
Well, hey, now it was his business partner who all that was on. So technically, it's different. I'm being facetious here, but no,
it was his
no.
Business partner. It was his business partner who just so coincidentally had put Berdiev's bank details into the back end of that game, because that's how Valve ended up figuring out it was him, because they matched the bank detail information up.
So this was actually a good, not even luck. It was just a lucky coincidence for them, or I said luck right there. So yeah, a lucky coincidence.
It gave them a non-controversial reason to ban the game. Where it was like, it wasn't anything related to the content. It was it's violated our terms of service, and it's not even to do with any content restrictions. So they kind of came out with that one clean. With Grape Day, yeah, I'm not even going to go on. I think people listening can probably imagine what that kind of game was like just by the title. That was very much rage baity, in the same ilk as Active Shooter.
I still remember the announcements from those guys where they were announcing, "Oh, we'll have this in it," and it was always some kind of really graphic, detailed description of something that was because they kept trying to top how offensive they could make it sound. There was no actual gameplay that was, I think, ever shown. At least I never saw any gameplay.
The game did get released. The developer released it on the Pirate Bay.
Oh.
Yeah, because I actually ended up playing the game because,
Was it just stick figures?
No, it was a very poorly put together visual novel. It was very short. It was only like 10-15 minutes, something like that. But because of the publicity it got, it made me want to at least see, is it as bad as what the developer was hyping it up to be? Is it as bad as what the community were hyping it up to be? And the short answer was not particularly. The marketing materials made it seem like it was a lot more. Don't get me wrong, it was like quite a. Yeah, I didn't feel comfortable playing it, put it that way. It wasn't a good experience by any means. But it, like, matching it up to the news feed of that game leading up to its release on Steam, and it didn't get released on Steam, spoiler. But yeah, the developer hyped it up way too much. He 100% was wanting rage bait clicks, and he was wanting to make it as offensive to try and get a marketing campaign going, and a political discourse started, basically.
Yeah, free speech and all.
Yeah, free speech and all. But where was I going with that? I've totally lost my train of thought.
You were going with the fact that about how Valve made their decisions on the two.
Yes.
And they kind of showcased.
Yeah, so with Grape Day, I think Valve dropped the ball a little bit, because unlike with Active Shooter, where they refused to play into that narrative, with Grape Day, they just did. They put up an announcement and basically said, yeah, we don't like the content in this game. And then it just got the community up in a frenzy, and then it just led into that political discourse. I'm thinking, well, you've got a policy that disallows troll developers. That is such an open and ambiguous rule that you can very easily apply it to this person, because they're very clearly trying to offend people. They're trying to make it as offensive as possible to a ridiculous degree, some of which wasn't even representative of the final game either that they ended up releasing. That was a very easy way for the Valve, I think, to dodge that kind of discussion, save face as well, and also try and dodge a very difficult fallout that would happen later on. But they didn't. So yeah, they do operate in some mysterious and interesting ways. some of which I'm not going to try and pretend to understand, because they're a multi-billion-dollar company. They clearly must know what they're doing to a degree. I would hope so. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I don't know if you guys have anything else we want to add on before we move on to our second and final topic.
I mean, the only thing I'll add is that it was very clearly a Valve's way of trying to recover from bad PR. It's by saying that they won't host it, which kind of went against their own principles about about this whole we don't decide anything, we just kind of, so long as it doesn't break the rules. And rather than saying, hey, we're not going to allow this to release because it's actually breaking our what we feel is our troll rule, which would have still caused some issue, but I don't think it at least I feel like it would have made it harder for the free speech people to argue against that. Because at least you're stating it's breaking one of your rules, even if it's something that's vague. But they didn't, because if they were to state that, then everyone else that was mad that it would release would then say you're not allowing it for moral reasons, right? So Valve stating that they weren't going to release it without stating why satisfies essentially the people that wanted it gone on moral grounds, because they can just they'll just assume that on moral grounds Valve don't need to explain something that should clearly be obvious. That's my take from that. But
yeah,
anyways.
no, and I think you're absolutely on point. You mentioned an important point that I totally neglected to mention. It's that Valve did establish themselves as not being, I guess, a content police, best way to describe
arbitrators. The arbitrators of what should and shouldn't be allowed in terms of assuming it's regular games, right?
Yeah, they weren't going to dictate what you can and can't play. I know that argument that they made kind of came from more their whole thing about when they launched Steam Greenlight, they weren't expecting visual novels to take off. Because a lot of people in the Valve offices apparently didn't like visual novels. But then when they released Steam Greenlight, they realized, oh no, actually there is a market for this, and people do actually want these. So I mean, I get it from that argument point of view, but yeah, it's a massive can of worms that I'm sure we'll end up opening again later at some point.
So speaking of Valve arbitrating,
yes, Valve arbitrating. Let's talk about the brand new Sentinels of the Storm article that clearly everyone on the internet is reading and talking about right now. So CAF released a new article this week on Sentinels of the Store, talking about how it only takes $100 to gain Valve's trust. CAF's obviously making reference to the Steam Direct fee that developers pay to get their games onto Steam. So a little bit of history, a little bit of background. Valve and Steam was initially very, very closed doors with Steam. They would very rarely let any external third-party games on. Then they started letting third-party games on from AAA developers. Then they would cherry-pick some indie games. And then that steamrolled to, indie games are actually performing quite well. Let's launch a program for indie developers to launch their games. And that ended up being Steam Greenlight. Steam Greenlight's system was you paid a one-off $100 fee. You could upload as many games as you wanted to the Steam Greenlight program. And this didn't mean that your game would get onto Steam, but instead it meant that it would be up for community voting. So the community would vote on usually a trailer, a few screenshots, a description of the game, and they'd be like, do you want to see this game on Steam? Would you not want to see this game on Steam? And you would basically vote on the games, and games that got past a certain threshold would receive an invitation from Steam to release their game. So one-off $100 fee, upload as many games you want to Steam Greenlight, but you've got to go through voting. That system got rolled back in 2017. I think it got launched in 2012, 2013. I'm a bit rusty, so one of you are welcome to correct me.
2013. I'm going to double check that, though.
2013. It sounds right. I think it is 2013. So Valve sunset Steam Greenlight in 2017, and they released it. They released a new system called Steam Direct. Steam Direct was basically, well, it's in the title, it was a more direct way for developers to post their games. So instead of developers putting games up to Steam Greenlight for community voting, they would now pay $100 per game, and they would just be guaranteed a slot on Steam. So no community voting, no quality control in that aspect. It would just be, right, here's your game, it's now up on our store, let users buy what they want to buy and let them not buy what they don't want to buy. There was some discussion in the lead up to the Steam Direct platform rollout, because there was maybe about 6 months in between the announcement of Direct and the announcement of Greenlight's closure, and before Greenlight got closed and Steam Direct launched, where people were debating about the price that Valve should set to allow games to be submitted. But I mean, I remember back in those days, I didn't think the price mattered, because I wouldn't want it to be set too high and it priced out indie developers from being able to upload their game, because I think the accessibility of the Steam platform is one of its biggest strengths. But then obviously people were concerned about asset flips, particular back in the day. But what CAF brings up now, CAF's kind of regenerated this argument in the recent developments of what we talked about last week with Click Adventure, with BlockBlasters, and just malware cases on Steam. CAF has now put this theory under some more scrutiny. His article argued that Steam's biggest flaw isn't any one particular scam. He argues that pretty much a lot of the scams that happen on Steam can be tied back to Valve's trust being too cheap and too automatic, which goes back to his article title, that Valve basically, if anyone just pays Valve $100, you've got a lot of trust with them. They'll let you ship whatever you want to ship, including malwares and including viruses. They've got full free reign of the Steam forum board. One topic that I saw some users talking about on the article in the comments, and yes, I do read the comments. I don't get the chance to respond to them a lot, but I do read them. Some users were also making mention of the fact that when they make a post in a game's community hub, the developer then also has the power to ban them from the forums. And then once upon a time, I'm like, oh, well, whatever. It's one game's community hub, and then, yeah, you're always going to get instances like that. But then the fact that those developers that pay $100 can then also resultantly lead you to a community ban, like what's happened to me in a couple of instances where it's been a couple of non-substantiated bans have come in, and it's then automatically triggered an algorithm that's then said, oh, this guy's had too many forum bans come up too quickly, so we need to put an automatic community ban on him, which was when Ratchet owned Sentinels temporarily for 24 hours because I got totally locked out the Steam community features.
What a glorious 24 hours it was.
So there was some other examples that CAF also brought up. It wasn't just in cases of the virus scanning and the
containers.
scamware.
Bring up the containers one. Because that's another great example. Because that was another great example of a developer being able to not just remove the inventory from your account, but also just ban you too as well.
Yeah.
I think a game ban, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it was. So what happened was, oh god, yeah, that was you've unlocked a memory. I hope I repressed some more. But I think it was earlier this year. I got tipped off about this game on Steam called Containers. It was basically a really shitty clicker game, very basic. But why it got flagged to me was because it had some Steam Marketplace items, a bit like those shell items that we spoke about last week, which were basically items that were binded to a game but held absolutely no purpose besides just being marketable items on the Steam Community Marketplace. But in Containers' case, they had used these shell items and were impersonating Counter-Strike guns and weapons to make users think that they were buying a knife for CSGO because it looked like the image. I can't remember if this was before or after Steam had rolled out their warning on games that you don't own if you're about to buy a community marketplace item for. But I think it was either shortly after or shortly before. And it didn't particularly matter to me that Valve had put that safeguard in. It was more, this developer shouldn't be doing this anyway, because it's showing an inherent deception to it. So I did my thing, wrote up an article talking about it, and I also, in hindsight, not a great idea, I wrote a review on the game page to warn users, which meant, because to be able to write Steam reviews, you have to play the game for at least 5 minutes to be able to write a Steam review. So, article goes up, I email Steam about it, and the game gets removed, I think maybe the next day. And what then happened was me and I think maybe 5 other users got a game ban on our accounts from the Containers developer. And a game ban is different from a VAC ban, the Valve anti-cheat ban, because a Valve anti-cheat ban is obviously enforced on Valve anti-cheat servers. A game ban is more so for game developers that host multiplayer games on Steam to be able to, keep their community safe of cheaters. With this game, though, Containers, it had no multiplayer. It had no multiplayer services. It had no online functionality. The developer did this purely out of a protest against what me and some other users were saying. Because
out of spite, that's what that was.
So it was a game ban. I'm like, oh well, you know what? It doesn't matter too much. But then I realized, wait a minute, this is displayed on my profile. I've got massive red fucking text across my profile. And people that aren't in the know, because I use my Steam profile account to reach out to people on Steam that are talking about issues or want to come to me and share something with me. If they see something like that, they're immediately going to think he's untrustworthy because they don't know the context behind that. So I'm thinking I want that removed because that's not just. So I'm thinking, right, I need to try and make a very strong case. Steam support were not helpful. I got about 3 or 4 declines from Steam support. So I decided to escalate the issue and I emailed my Valve contacts. But in the interim, between me stopping my contact with support and emailing Valve, I got communication through from another user who shared with me a Telegram group chat where the developer was linking my Steam profile to his games community on Telegram, encouraging people to go and mass report my profile. He admitted in the screenshot that he knew I hadn't done anything wrong. He just encouraged them to report me under any and all of the things you can flag a profile for under the sun to try and get my account banned, basically. Which I didn't particularly appreciate, not gonna lie. But that just goes to show how far some of these people are willing to go. Unfortunately, not everyone that pays to have a game up on Steam is acting in good faith. They are acting in bad faith, whether that be trying to scam users or they're going after their critics. Some of CAF's other examples include like the fake Fortnite game that launched early this year, the clone games like the day before that happened at the beginning of last year, malware demos like the sniper game that launched on Steam and they linked a third-party website in the description that just downloaded malware onto your computer and it never got flagged. And CAF also mentions about the shovelware titles that get pushed onto Steam over many, many months. What CAF talks about in the article is he proposes for manual review for updates from new and unverified developers, restrictions on marketplace items and refunds for fraudulent ones, and tighter community feature eligibility, similar to what the trading card unlocking system does. And basically ends it on his key point of Steam's biggest issue is that $100 buys you Valve's trust and Valve doesn't check again after that point. So open it up. In fact, I'll go to Ratchet because I know that you've got to leave very, very soon, Ratchet. But do you think, particularly as a game developer, it'll be good to get your feedback on it. Do you think $100 is too low of a barrier, or is the problem more that there's no second layer of verification to some of these issues?
In my eyes, it's a multi-part problem. Like I said last week, I don't like being restricted as a developer. I don't like the fact that we can't have trading cards and stuff like that in a game because of people like this. because I have to go in like a minute, my kind of TLDR, and I'll probably expand upon this next week, or just send you a recording of me losing my mind, that can go in at the end, or can be Patreon exclusive. Now, anyway, whole point is basically, yeah, I think $100 is fine. I think the amount of stuff you have access to should be limited, and Valve, it just needs to be a thing where you have to prove to Valve that you're an actual developer and not somebody trying to scam. So you should have to provide a lot more information. I think, as much as I don't like providing information to companies, I think in this case, because you're a business, it's a little different. So being able to provide like your actual business ID, your whatever country you're in, the way they handle business is different. Like in Australia, we have to register with a business number and stuff like that. So having to provide your business, your like official business number and your address, not like a bunch of stuff that Valve can use, and sign a bunch of documents, basically say like, hey, if you screw around, like Valve will verify all of this information. If you're not legit, you get booted off of direct. And if you're what's the other half? Essentially you get booted off direct, or on the other side of it, if you screw around and we have all that information, we can sue you. Like, make it a thing where people have to take accountability for what they're doing. Also, given that we have strict access to everything else, I'm more than happy for stuff like community marketplace items to be restricted as well until you verify. But also on that note, I think instead of locking it behind Steam store page, like the analytics that they see, that we have no idea what ones they're actually checking, what it should be is they should just, like, you should have to just prove you're a developer. Like, you should be able to say, like, here's all the games we've released, here's all the stuff we've done. If you're a newer developer, it's a little harder. But if you as a person have worked on games before, then you can just link all those games and be like, look, can you verify me faster? Can I be fast-tracked? Because I have a history of making games. I'm not a scammer. Here's all my history of work. I think there should be a fast track for people who have a history making games, or can prove very quickly that they are making something legit that isn't a scam game. Because, yeah, the problem, I think, is the fact that somebody, and they have done this before, where they just grab a pre-existing game off Steam, they just pull out the game content, put a virus in, and then submit that, and Steam sandboxes it, which is like, it runs in a virtual machine to make sure nothing suspicious is happening, and if suspicious stuff is happening, then it will flag it and it won't be uploaded. But if you're working on your own new virus, I said this in the community, if you're working on your own like virus that hasn't been displayed before, if no one has your code or has the like execution of your virus, then it's not going to pop up in any antivirus checkers, because it's a whole new thing, and this is the problem. So it's like, it's really hard to detect that, but it's kind of a mixed bag. It's a very mixed bag, and I don't have enough time to explain how many things I think need to change.
I was going to say, I'm very disappointed that you're leaving, because, I mean, there's a lot to unpack there, and there's a lot of questions that I would like to pose to you about, but I'm sure we can touch on those next week. But no, thank you very much, Ratchet, for your time. I'll let you take your leave now, if you wish, and then me and SVD can continue the rest of the episode. Now he's gone, let's talk shit about him. Okay. There was a lot of good things Ratchet talked about there, and lots of things I would like to talk about next week. I mean, I'll bounce them off you and also to the viewers, just maybe some food for thought. You mentioned about an extra layer of verification for developers to prove they're developers, but I think you also acknowledged that it's harder, and this was something I was going to go on to, it's harder if you're a first-time developer to prove something like that. It's not like you've got a game developer ID card or something like that proves who you are. And particularly, you mentioned about companies, but I mean, I think there's a lot of people that are going on Steam and selling their game as an individual. And obviously, you should be registered on tax records and ideally file yourself as a sole trader if you're going to be doing something like that. But I mean, if you're just doing something as a hobby and then you just put a game up on Steam and then you're not going to make a lot of money, that might never really enter your mind to do something like that. So it's almost about, you've got official game developers that are doing this either for a corporation, for profit, or whatever. But then you've also got hobbyist game developers, which I think maybe something like that could potentially lock out a bit more. What do you think, S3D?
Yeah, I don't think like a Steam developer card of if you're a real developer, it's too hard to do that. Um, and I'm just kind of thinking in my head, other ways of possibly trying to um, crack down or verify that a game is a quote unquote real game. That is something that Valve, I think that's the term that Valve has used. Real games versus fake games. There's nothing I can think of that wouldn't somehow potentially restrict uh, indie developers in a way, shape, or form. Because like one thing I was thinking about is, what if Valve, if they had either developed an AI system or whatever, or had their system look to see, okay, why is it that John 001 to John 0099 have all bought this one game, right? And but the thing is, you can't fault the developer for that. It might seem suspicious, but it might just be that you had some other bot network that is independent of the developer that the developer doesn't even know about, all buy the developer's game just because perhaps it's the cheapest in their region or something like that. So like and this was just me going like, well, what if they did this? Well, no, it would hurt developers, which I do think that is something that Valve keep in mind.
What do you think about the $100 fee? Do you think that's a fair price point, or would you change it personally?
I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change it at all because the the thing is that the whole point of the $100 fee was so that everyone could essentially afford this. Because the moment you start trying to make a barrier, you are going to get the if I use the term coyotes, would you understand that?
Yes, yeah.
Because that's what happened in Steam Greenlight. The difference is that what you're doing is you're going to be funneling some indie developers uh, potentially towards unsavory people, scammers mostly. Um, and it's going to turn into a thing of where like, oh, you can't afford let's say they raise it to $1,000, right? And some indie studios would still be able to afford it, but your independent single developer in a small apartment that also works several jobs or whatever while developing the game of their dreams, it's going to be a very steep thing for them. And all that's going to do is that if they're then approached by some shady person, hey, we'll take care of your developer fee if you let us publish for you.
Sure, but I mean, I would propose, sorry, I would probably propose a countermeasure where I would say, is that not still happening now? Not in that sense, in terms of covering the publisher fee, but when you get a game on Steam, there's obviously the conversation of oversaturation of the market continuing. But there's scammers that are targeting that essence in that they will help people get their games noticed, whether that's through fake review services or other questionable means of like artificially inflating the game and the algorithm. Is that not, is a low price point also not also encouraging that issue?
I would argue that it would give those scammers less reason to be able to, or it would make it harder for them to persuade those people, right? Because the idea is right is that those people approaching like the small indie developer, they would have two reasons to bluff to essentially convince them rather than just one. Um, and it might be very well where if it's the $100, you may have the indie dev go, I would rather put my game up there and risk it not taking off, thing going under them, and then potentially, being screwed out of money or whatever. Um, because I mean, when you think about like the whole giveaway group stuff, that it was bullying. I mean, they attempted the one of the giveaway groups attempted to extort the Subnautica developers, which that still blows my mind.
Yeah, and you obviously had the likes on myped.ru, or MIP, sorry, as they're going by now, um, have full-on forums that were basically like a
Keys for
mafioso or
votes,
racket,
yeah.
yeah, where if the developer didn't uphold their sketchy agreement, then the developers would get doxxed. They would just subject the developer to harassment.
Doxed and mass downvotes on their Greenlight page. So, in order to not deal with that, right? That's why you have an open market, so you don't give any of the scammers a leg to stand on. The only leg that those scammers can try to stand on would be like, oh, we can do the marketing. But here's the thing, though. eh, That's something that some people may, it's easier to look into, right? It's easier to go, okay, let's take a look at these games that you supposedly have marketed and are a success. Or it might not be convincing of a reason for some people where they're like, I'd rather take my chances alone. Um, so that's one thing in which it's easier, I think, to um, combat that on, right? That's very much a individual willpower thing. But if you were to raise the prices, those people who are desperate to get their games on Steam might just say yes to those people.
I
And
suppose so, yeah. I suppose so.
Valve, and another thing too is you have to also look at Valve do not want another case of essentially coyotes, right? They don't want another case of these people who claim that they can get people past the barrier, right? And I would not be shocked if um back initially when I do remember for a short period of time uh developers and whatnot saying, hey, we need 250 reviews and we'll get trading cards. Them posting announcements like that. Most likely they're told, oh yeah, that's the that's the
That's a
secret
magic
to getting,
number.
yeah, that's the magic, which it's not. Um, my guess is it's tied to sales. I believe that there is a USD sales threshold in which Valve would probably then allow you to have trading cards, because then you've proven that you're a real game.
From my understanding from the Steamworks chats I've attended, actually, I'm not sure if I can reveal this. No, I'm not allowed to reveal it actually because that'll be under NDA. Damn, I'm
I
annoyed
mean,
about that.
come on, you just put on a mask, voice changer as well, and you'll be like the masked magician, like Valentino was
I,
back in
I,
like
I
the
think
'90s.
I think I'm allowed to say that there are multiple things. There's not just one thing. There's not
Yeah,
one
and I would agree
threshold.
with that. But I do feel like it's one of the things that is absolutely, I think, hard coded, because that a sales threshold, I think, is costly to like manipulate past, right? You can't fake money, the checks cannot bounce. So I think that it's a much harder threshold to try to manipulate against. Not that it can be still done, but it's very costly to do so. But again, I doubt Valve would just rely on that. Um, I do want to bring up though, my old actually you brought this up to me the other day, in which I've been kind of thinking about, which was my post from, good God, 6 years ago, where I did my own a kind of year and a half slash 2 years kind of retrospective on the changes that Valve had made. And when you look at each and every one of those changes, it was against bad actors. It was making sure that bad actors could not profit off of Steam. However, most importantly, it was also to make sure, and this is the other thing that just kind of hit me now, that they could not profit off of Steam without Steam somehow also taking a profit. Because a lot of times they were able to cut Steam out of this. So trading cards, for instance, you had all these other websites that would level up your Steam account.
Yeah, bot
Um,
networks and that.
Bot networks, right? So you had all these people farm cards, turn those into gems, and then turn the gems into like booster packs. And Valve effectively tackled that by making sure that a lot of newer titles couldn't get access to trading cards, as well as most likely, though I don't have definitive proof of this, but this is a guess. My guess too is that the gem value for trading cards, especially for newer games, for indie games, are probably not going to yield as much as like triple A's. Or it may just be that trading cards in general have a diminished quote unquote gem value. So you would need even more to essentially craft a booster pack. And even then, those booster packs probably don't sell as much anymore anyways, because Valve, and this is another thing that just hit me now. Valve did the Steam Point
There's a lot of
shop.
things hitting you. Are you okay?
Yeah. Well, the Steam Point shop, which I'm actually going to jot that down. Sorry, because this will be for a future article for me to do another retrospective on.
Ooh,
Um, but
exclusive teaser.
well, it'll be a voice part of this now is that the Steam Point shop, which has all of these customizations for various games and whatnot. So that way you didn't have to rely on badges, right? On getting badges in order to get access to emoticons and all kinds of cool stuff to support your favorite games. Now, using your Steam points, which again, the only way to get Steam points is either from getting people that give you points in terms of like the awards, or anytime you buy a game on Steam, it's like you get, I think it's 100 points for every dollar you spend or something like that.
Hmm.
And then you could use those points to buy cosmetic stuff to deck out your Steam profile, where it used to be just relegated to only the trading card system for doing that. You don't have to do that anymore, which has also made the trading card stuff even less, even more worthless than to some of these card farmers. Granted, they're still going to try to do it because they can still get something out of it, but it's not as much. The other thing too was you remember the Steam gifting system, the
Yes, I
original.
do. Hmm.
People were running individual stores out of their own Steam profile. And when you think about it too, like initially Valve's like, how cool would it be that if you had a friend that didn't have a PC yet, but there were some games that were on sale for really good discount, you would buy a bunch of those games, right? And then as soon as your friends were able to get a PC that could handle it, you can literally just give them that gift right then and there.
Like that's a thing, and with a lot of what Valve do. And I mean, I don't think anyone would think that if you add some cool little trading cards into the Steam ecosystem, for you to like have a little collection in addition to your game, no one would think that that can be gamified or used for nefarious means. But as we've seen over years, then it's almost a model that some scammers rely on for their schemes to be profitable. And you would never think that when you're drafting it up.
Yeah, they look for any loophole on that. That's why they did the changes to the gifting system to where people could, because again, think about it. They buy games that are super cheap and then would run a store out of their own Steam account in which Valve does not take a cut out of. Now, people would argue, well, Valve already took their cut when you bought the games. Yes, but you're also then selling them on the Steam account again as a reseller, but not even a reseller that Valve like approves of. It's not like Humble Bundle, which has its own issues, or it's not like Green Man Gaming or any of these other stores that you'll find on Is There Any Deal, which I highly recommend. If you don't use it, you absolutely should. It's a great way to keep an idea on that, as well as to buy from stores that are legitimate, that have that get their keys legitimately. Because Is There Any Deal has a real thing about making sure that the only stores that they display on there are the ones that can prove that their keys come directly essentially from Steam / the developers, not shady gray market
We have
key
a text
resellers.
channel in the Discord, game deals, and we make it a policy that mainly to obviously curb anyone thinking, oh, I'll share a deal from G2E or Kingwin. We immediately just say, hey, is there any deals list of approved retailers? You must only link these approved retailers. We don't allow any linking to anywhere else. Because then obviously, I mean, we've talked about lek shops as well, Steam Key lek shops, which
a lot of
lot
them have closed down by now because of the changes to Valve's system.
There are
Valve,
ones still around. They are still around and active.
That's true. Again, like it's even what is it? Even a nuclear bomb can't kill cockroaches, right? But the thing is, though, is that I'm just looking at my article. Valve made several big changes in 2017 to essentially combat. It was very much a like if you were to look at the changes and just that year alone, it's like a massive punch to a lot of the bad actors and scammers. Steam Greenlight means that they can't act as publishers / coyotes easily, because now anyone with $100 can upload a game to Steam. The changes to trading cards make sure that they can't profit off of that system. The changes to key generations also make it hard, and in fact, that starved out a lot of the giveaway groups and the lek shops. The Steam gifting system also did the same thing. The other thing too that wasn't talked about as much was Valve updated the Steam limited user account stuff. There might for like suppose because the thing is that until you essentially paid $5 to Steam, right? Like you buy something, or that you add $5 from your credit card to your Steam wallet, your account will be limited. And believe it or not, and this is something that I didn't know until I found out, via a various way, was that
that's not nefarious at all.
No, I have an alt account that I haven't used in forever, but I didn't realize that on there. Every year you need to be spending at least $5 on Steam, or your account goes into a limited status.
And that's not activating keys that were worth that amount. But yeah, you've got to buy a game on Steam.
Most people never know this because most people buy at least $5 worth of stuff on Steam. Usually it's a lot more than $5, but the point being is that that restriction is always satisfied for essentially legitimate customers. For a real person, they even if you're like dirt poor, somehow you'll typically spend $5 over your regional equivalent that would satisfy that thing, because there's usually at least a game that's on sale for that amount, or a few games even. But when they did that, when they updated that to close whatever loophole that there was there, that pissed off the bot farmers even more so, because now it became even more costly for them to have card farming. So like they made it more costly. They restricted trading cards, Steam key regenerations. This was all in 2017 that this happened. And when we look at it now, giveaway groups, they're essentially non-existent, or they're shadows over their former selves. Lek shops aren't as prevalent anymore. They're still there, but it's not as they don't have the massive quantity of keys that they used to. And trading card farming happens, but it's so much harder, and it takes so many more hoops to jump through in order to, I think, try to generate a profit, which then leads into the problems that we have now because of the Steam community market that Valve refuses to
speaking
change.
of some of the problems that we're experiencing now, to kind of centralize the argument a bit more on one of the points that Kath brings up, where he mentions that he thinks there needs to be manual reviews for game updates from new or unverified developers. Because we did touch on this. Well, Ratchet touched a little bit on that argument last week, because I mentioned I'd seen some people making, maybe not quite. I think there was some more extreme versions of that argument being made about every update from every developer needs to be reviewed. CAF's kind of taken a bit more of a filtered approach of, if it's a developer that is brand new or is a developer that isn't quote unquote verified, then Valve need to be doing manual reviews of each build that they upload. I know Ratchet started talking about this in terms of how you would maybe verify yourself as a developer. But do you think that manual update reviews would actually stop the scams, or do you think it would have a more... Well, I guess what I'm more trying to go at, if it's a seesaw, and you've got on one side it's stopping scams happening, and then on another side you've got it slowing developers down, which one do you think is going to be more outweighed?
Slowing developers down. To mainly review every build, every update that goes out, I would honestly slow so many things down and be very discouraging to developers. And the only way around that, like even then, if I were to suggest a system that would somehow still work with that concept in mind, it would be this whole, like, again, you would introduce a kind of like a tier system, which again, it goes right back down to shutting out indie devs to a certain extent, where like if you have trusted developers that are developers that for X amount of time have not had any issues in terms of with their updates that haven't been flagged as, you know, having viruses. But indie devs, all their stuff has to be mainly reviewed and updated. I mean, think about if they're trying to fix their game because there's a game-breaking bug that they ended up releasing. If they don't get it, like, reviewed or whatever in like a few weeks or a month, and people are going to be complaining and blaming the developer for it. When the developer's like, listen, I have to wait for an approval from Valve for this update. It wouldn't be fair to them.
No.
Now, I think the best way to go about this is what Ratchet suggested, as well as what I would suggest too, which is to go back to the same well that's worked before in terms of like green light and whatnot, is allow the people to choose, or allow the community to help, which is actually for Valve, however they set up their report system, is to actively look for reports with the keywords like, as Ratchet suggested, having like if a report says a game has a virus or it has malware or anything of that sort, right? And because the thing is, a lot of times, I'll tell you what, I'm very easily discouraged, and like even if a game has like a scam going on, or a developer who's sketchy, or they're doing something that they shouldn't, like some of the developers we've talked about or that we've dealt with in the past, I don't think I've reported any of them because I don't know if Steam support looks at it, or if they would just go, huh, yeah, just someone who's salty about it. Like, yeah, because I'm sure they're inundated with all kinds of reports of people who are like, I'd like to report this Ubisoft game because I feel cheated out of my money because, for whatever reason you want to think of, political and non-political. This game is overpriced, thus it's a scam, and this game needs to be reported. And it's like, I'm sure Valve gets a ton of those. And the problem is that how do you sort out those from the actual legitimate ones? And the thing is that I would honestly, and this is going to sound biased, but if you want to like use your like people resources appropriately, I would be looking at reports from essentially every game that's not like part of the AAA publishers. Which is biased.
Well, I don't think it is.
But...
I don't think it is because AAA developers don't include malware. I can hear communities out there yelling, they include de novo, they include DRM, which is a virus, and it's like, well, no, it's not really a virus, is it?
No, it's an anti-fun tool.
Yeah, it's an anti-fun
sometimes.
Tool. But I mean, I'm quite keen because I mean, Calf obviously mentions it in his article talking about quote unquote manual review for updates from new or unverified developers. And Ratchet was obviously just before he scampered off was talking about this idea of how to verify a genuine developer from a non-genuine developer. And I think that in principle is a good idea, but I just
Manpower wise, it's
find
not.
my brain. Well, manpower wise, I think it is. My main problem is I trip over at the first hurdle thinking about that process of how do you verify a developer? I'm sure Valve have the staff. I'm sure they're able to verify developers, but how do you put a system like that in? How do you, like Toby Fox, for example? Toby Fox uploads Undertale onto Steam. He's an independent developer, doesn't have a company backing him. He was virtually unknown before that point. What does Steam do? Like, even if Steam did the full shebang, Steam sends a Zoom link to Toby Fox, says, right, you need to be on this meeting, we're going to speak to you, we're going to talk to you, we're going to get to know you, we're going to invite you over for dinner. We want to know everything about you, and we need to see your full tax records and all that. We need to see the full files of your game. I don't know how that would help the problem, because it's like the fight, like as we've established before, when a malware gets put into Steam, gets put into a game on Steam, it's done through an update file. So yes, Steam review those games at the first instance, but they don't they don't review the update files. I think you're right. It's unrealistic to expect Valve to review every single branch update, even through an automated system. Because I mean, I know a lot of their Steam community relies on a lot of automated moderation these days as well. But I think with game files, that's something you can do. Keyword triggers and all that sort of stuff, like .trg or whatever. But like Ratchet was saying, if you're writing your own virus, that you can only update your Trojan horse detector so much. And it's only going to pick up the known viruses that it's aware of. When a developer or a programmer writes their own virus and just implements it in, it's not going to get picked up. I find myself in this quite pretentious position where I'm saying to Valve, do more, but then when I'm asked what, it's like, I don't know actually. Now that I'm being quizzed about it, I don't actually know what the best course of action that would be. I don't think upping the fee is necessarily the right decision. I get the argument Calf's making, of course, where for $100 you're not just buying a game on Steam, you're buying a lot of trust with that. Valve are putting a lot of trust and faith in you, not abusing their tools, not taking the mick. But I don't think that upping the fee would do that. I think that it would only just price out genuine indie developers. I don't think it's going to stop scammers, because I think if scammers know there's money in it for them, take BlockBlasters. If the BlockBlasters developer was scamming 30k off of people, is he going to be that fussed about a $500 fee or a $1,000 fee per game? No, because he's going to get a much larger payout. Same with the Click Adventure dev. I know that he maybe didn't walk away with as much, but I'm sure he walked away with at least $1,000. Easy.
I think I'll use like an analogy, for instance, or metaphor. If we look at Steam, imagine Steam like acres upon acres upon acres of stalls, like marketplace stalls, right? And the main road, right? In order, like when you enter, like this area, the main road, all along the main road is going to be, as well as all the shops closest to the main road, are going to be your AAAs, right? And just past the AAAs are going to then be your more established indies, and then anything past that is going to be a bunch of people that are trying to make some kind of sale. You know, they're newcomers, right? Your indie devs.
Even sorry to interrupt, but even something like that then makes me start wondering, how do you define a AAA developer? What is AAA? When does a company get so big that it would then warrant itself moving itself into that box? Like, say someone like Devolver Digital, they publish a lot of indie games, but I wouldn't class them fully as AAA. I would fall them into like a AA
Yeah,
category.
they're double A.
But then who? who is the one to make that judgment? You're asking humans at Valve that all will differentiate and have different agreements on that.
If you're gonna pick apart every single one of these, I'm gonna take a trip over to. No, I'm kidding. No, no. The thing is that with AAA's real quick is mainly established brand names. So your major publishers, EA, Ubisoft, um, was it Warner Bros, Microsoft,
One of Brothers games.
PlayStation, yeah. Right. The other thing too is the sheer amount of money that they move, right? A lot, because they'll probably be dealing with hundreds of, a AAA publisher would probably be dealing with billions, whereas a double A publisher might be dealing with just millions, right? And double A might deal with hundreds of millions or tens of millions versus an indie publisher or an indie developer at most might be dealing with millions, right? At most. But anyways, that's the breakdown for that. So to not get too caught up in the weeds on that, right? So again, imagine this a flea market or a marketplace kind of thing. All these stalls set up. Your established brand names are going to be the closest to the main road, to the main entrance, right? And as you get further from the main entrance, you're going to start encountering your indie devs, essentially, right? Your indie shops. Now, the farther you get out, the less people there are. I would argue. Also imagine that you've got these crowds all around like the AAA shops, and you've got groups around the indie places or the AA places, and maybe a few people at various indie stuff, right? With their own communities. The scammers take advantage of the fact that no one will pay attention to them. The funny thing is that so many tools, because of Steam's API, there are so many tools in which people can just watch like a game that gets published onto Steam, to where like even if you don't think anyone's going to notice, people are going to notice in some way, shape, or form. Um, like you've got the group like the Remove Game Collectors. Anytime there's a game developer that announces that they are going to close up shop for whatever reason it may be, they will let their community know, and we'll see if there's any way that they can get, perhaps like as a good gesture, a little bit of a discount or a sale on the game so that they can buy it for their collection, right? And so those people, but the thing is, those people pay, they've got all kinds of bots and just their connection to the API and able to be able to kind of detect those announcements and immediately kind of get there, so that way they're not, that way they don't hear about it 2 months after the developer's already shut down, right?
It's like vultures heading to the decaying corpse in the middle of the
Hey,
wilderness.
now some of them are good people.
No, no, no. I don't mean it in a negative way at all. I just find the analogy quite funny. It's like a game is about to die and be shut down, then there's just
It's
this
just
massive
part of
community
the
that come and
ecosystem, right?
yeah, of course, it's part of the ecosystem.
But
It's part of
anyways,
life.
so imagine, right, getting back to like this acres upon acres of land, and you have to also imagine that around each shop there's just a bunch of land around it, in order for there to be kind of like room for people. Um, and like I said, the farther you go out, the more barren it kind of seems to be in terms of like people. And so imagine, right, that in the case of like these scammers, like the ones that um, pull the community market shenanigans. So in this case, I mean, just because I can't think of anything else, imagine that instead they make a meth lab there, okay? Now they're out in the middle of fucking nowhere with this in this acres upon acres of land. They're far apart from anyone that's paying attention, and a few people around them, right? A few people might come their way, smell the meth cooking, and and the thing is like they obviously that's not allowed there. They you can't cook meth in this uh you know uh community market. You can't make meth in this marketplace kind of stuff. And so the thing is that if they don't tell Valve, and if Valve doesn't take it seriously, the person cooking meth is going to continue cooking meth, right? So the only way to change this is if Valve pays more attention to those reports on Steam. So because the thing is like if, again, same example, if then, if like again, looking at like the field stuff, if you've got like Steam staff as like your, not security, but your like help staff, right? Hey, I'm looking for where the EA games are. Yeah, just they're third on the left, right? So now but if they start to lean more heavily into listening to user reports, so now when a customer goes up to them, hey, there's a guy that's cooking meth down on row 58 in like column 202, right? They got one person that says that, then another, then another, then another. And hopefully by the third one, that person, that Steam staff is gonna go, okay, we need to go and investigate this. And they're gonna walk over, they're gonna see the person cooking meth and kick them out.
Have you filed a ticket with Steam support recently?
For something else though, that's the thing. So I view Steam support, their response times or whatever to certain things differently. When I filed a Steam support ticket for when my fucking Steam Deck was stolen, I'm sorry for cursing for YouTube. Um, it was $800, almost $900. That's different because Valve.
Did you get the 1 terabyte model?
I got the whatever the max. I think it's 2 terabytes or something like that, or is it 1 ter? It might be 1 terabyte. Whatever the max model is that you can buy on the Steam store right now. That's what I got. Because I figured might as well go broke. Go big or go home. At least with a handheld. I felt. I why skimp on that, especially when I was gonna be on the plane for 4 or 5 hours. Anyways, in that instance though, right, I spent $900, $900 on an item and did not get it. Valve, who care about their reputation, are going to want to make sure that not only am I not lying, but they also want to make sure that if I'm not lying, I get a replacement. Because they do, because otherwise, because the other thing too is going to be like, lawsuit, chargeback, whatever. Although, never do a chargeback against Valve. As slow as their support can be, in the end, it does work. And I did get a replacement for my Steam Deck, and I don't know, and I do believe the thief probably got away with it, unless they activated it and perhaps Valve were able to track it down via location. But yeah, after I filed the police report, which like I feel like Valve's gonna police report as well as communication with UPS. And so you now have multiple verified sources of like something was stolen.
Yeah, you've got multi-layers. It's not just one random customer who's claiming that they've lost their Steam Deck because they believe it was stolen. You've got verifiable proof from the company that were in charge of delivering it to you as well. Which then goes back to the whole thing of they're trusting corporations more than indies as well.
But the point is that I felt like support would work in that instance because I, as a customer, spent $900 worth of money, right? And they're a legitimate business, and they do not want bad reviews, bad press, whatever.
Well, I mean, I would be.
Point being is that I spent a lot of money, and the thing is that I might not spend any more money if I did not get my stuff back, kind of a deal, right? So in order to make sure that I'm happy by getting a replacement and thus continuing to spend money on Steam, that's kind of the logic there. It doesn't work in every case, but in a lot of cases with major companies, though, it does usually.
So Yeah, so I was just going to say, example from last week, Click Adventure. One user spent $200 on the Steam Community Marketplace. While they didn't spend it, obviously their account was hacked, and the hacker spent it on the Steam Marketplace, and Steam still refused a refund in that instance. Even though I think there's very clear evidence that there was a security measure that was knocked down by this hacker. Steam Guard was disabled. I can understand and I can see your perspective in terms of you've had
Can you see
a
the
negative
difference between the two,
experience,
though?
and
There's a
not
difference.
particularly.
I bought directly from Steam. I did not buy a seller through that Steam approved for my Steam Deck. I bought it directly from them. Whereas when it comes to, let's say, community market items, Valve doesn't view that as a that they really have any hand in it. It's just that this is someone on their store, that you had someone buy something from a developer who is just on the Steam platform. Not that Valve, I don't think, feel that they have really any responsibility in that. Versus, let's say, a Steam Deck, which is I'm buying directly from them.
I get that they would feel more of an onus of responsibility in your case, but I think that onus of responsibility should still translate to this incident in particular as well, because it is still, Steam are still getting money for that. They are getting a cut from every marketplace item. There's a security vulnerability that's been taken advantage of. They're refusing to take accountability for that because they're then putting the onus back on the user, and they're also refusing to refund them what they're owed.
I agree.
And that was also in a case of, I know that some users only lost $12, which, hey, any money amount lost is shit. But the user that lost $200, I mean, I think that's ridiculous. It's totally ridiculous.
And the thing is that it does bewilder me that Valve haven't given them a refund on that, especially considering. But if I remember correctly, did they do refunds for when people bought the fake CS:GO and fake Dota items? I don't think they did.
I don't think they did. I didn't hear anything about it.
So like at least when it comes to the community market items, Valve seems to be very much a well, that's on you kind of mentality, which I would disagree with. Um, but that's the thing, is that it's very much a that's on the um what is it, the what's the phrase, like the something of the bearer of
You're the syrup to my pancakes?
no, the bearer the burden of responsibility is on the customer, not on them, kind of a deal. I think there's some kind of Latin phrase for that, but or maybe I'm thinking of was it caveat emptor, buyer beware?
Maybe. I'm not as well refined in my
I'm
Latin.
shocked that the fucking um uh, the person that's in the business that you're at for your real job isn't versed in Latin.
I'm not a
or
Latin translator.
I'm
I'm not a Latin
no,
translator.
but like I kind of figured that you would
I've
have.
done zero Latin.
I kind of figured that you might remember, like you're like that you would have taken Latin classes from whenever you went to university or something like that.
No, no, and I had no. There was absolutely no Latin. The only foreign languages I studied for at least a short period was German and French.
For
That was
anyone
it.
wonder,
I mean,
for anyone wondering here, Mellow's real job is a cat wrangler. So
yeah, I'm a cat wrangler, so I've got to speak Latin to cats. But I know little bits of Latin that I've picked up from like either reading some books or playing some games that might have some Latin inscription, like in Occidentus Cita Est and all Mundi and
but
shit like
well,
that.
to be fair, I think it was more of the fact that it's caveat emptor or something like that. Buyer beware is what I think that
Yeah, I've never
roughly.
heard of that saying.
Um,
Someone in the comments might.
yeah,
Have.
but I think there may be a different one for the burden of investigation, or the burden of like responsibility or whatever is on the buyer. Is there? I think there's a different one for that. But anyways, um, I think that's how Valve kind of views this with community market items, and which is why I think it's also their because they probably make a lot of money on the community marketplace, just like the marketplace in general. Um, they don't want to do anything that disrupts that flow of money, even though, to be honest, that is where the scams are at. That is where, in fact, now it, I wouldn't call it a scam per se, but Banana, the game, right, the cooker game, as well as all the other clones like it. The whole point of it is to get rare drops to then sell to someone else. And the only reason why someone else would buy it is so that they can also then sell to someone else for even more money, who would then would buy it, would supposedly want to buy it so they could. It becomes this weird pyramid scheme kind of a deal. Not it's not a pyramid scheme thing, but it's this weird like it's essentially trying to find a sucker game, really, is what it kind of feels like. Because why would you have these items in your inventory apart from trying to sell it to someone, to and make money off of the person that you sold it to? But but that being a perpetual thing. um and that's the thing I don't get, right? Because like there's a finite end to that. Eventually it's going to get to a price that no one's going to buy it, or it might die down where everyone's like, where if the amount of interest in people buying that stuff goes down, well, there went the whole point of the game, right? So it just kind of dies. um but the thing is that, like, as pointless of a thing that is, and to be honest, I feel like those games only exist to then make money on the marketplace. That it's not, and in that way, it's not a fake game, but by God, it feels a bit dangerously close to a fake game. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Well, yeah, no, I get totally what you mean, and I mean, and we even talked about it last week where we were discussing about the limiting Steam Marketplace items, I've already forgotten what I dubbed them. Shell items, the shell items, like the shell items issues last week, where you just have no marketplace functionality at the beginning. You have to earn that
At
same way
least
the Steam trading cards were.
like golf with your friends, it's actual customizable things. You get, where you what is it, like the effects, like having like
You've got a hat, you've got a
a
trail.
golf ball. Yeah, yeah, a trail, especially like the trails, like having the golf ball on fire, right? Whenever you go to swing it or whatever. Like, and that, but the thing is, the only way to get that effect is via a community market item. So at least that actually has a function to it. This
Yeah,
stuff
and
is
plus as
just.
well,
Hmm?
if you remember, I'm not sure how closely you follow Golf with Your Friends, but it didn't launch with a community marketplace functionality. It went through early access, and then that got added in later on.
As it should, because it was something that the developers decided to add in later on, once the game was already kind of thriving and whatnot, to add, essentially extra sprinkles on it. It's a nice thing, to put on top of. It's icing on the cake, essentially.
The danger with a lot of these kinds of games, like you mentioned, the banana kind of steers quite close towards. It's basically launching an NFT marketplace, I feel, on Steam that aren't being labeled as an NFT. It's like having these quite exclusive items that really
Go
rich people
nowhere.
just, yeah, that just go nowhere. They just go in infinite trades across the marketplace where rich people like to feel like they've got something unique. Well, I say rich people, rich dumb people, have got something unique that only they have, or that they can pass it on and sell for a lot more money. And then that just, the more trades of that happen, for money on the marketplace, it's just the more money that the user makes, the more money the developer makes, and the more money Valve makes. And that's why Valve, I would like to think Valve could maybe step in and change that system at some point in the future, but I'm not sure how quick they'll be to act on it. I think I'm going to wrap it up there, unless you have anything that you want to conclude with about anything that we've talked about today, S3D.
I do have, I think, a final thought on the shell item stuff. The funny thing about this is that this would be, I'm sure, there's probably a game that already does it now. That's one of those. That's something like Banana Clicker, or the various other clones of it. This is what I feel like perfection of disguising money laundering, of what you could do with money laundering. Because the problem before, right, is that you'd have a game launch as a $200 game on Steam that's just a bunch of assets. Like it's very clearly someone's just gonna buy it, where they'll just use all these bot accounts and whatnot to buy it. And yeah, Valve takes a cut, but that's the price of getting clean money out of it. And then Valve would semi quickly shut those games down. It would be obvious. But then some of those games decided, okay, fine, it'll be $30 for a base price, but we'll have community market items. Remember, there was one that had like it was like some kind of sniper like shooter game, and you had like a ghillie suit that went for $200 on the community marketplace. Um, and but that Valve eventually shut that down. However, if you do something like a clicker thing where there's enough people that have interest in it, you can slip your bots in and it'll look like there's marketplace transactions there. Man, look, we had this item that sold like for $1,000. And then people will all think that like, oh man, someone actually bought that legitimately for $1,000, huh? They won't realize that it's all it is money laundering. So it's the with Valve not if Valve does not take an action on changing the community marketplace items and restricting the community market items to legitimate devs, i.e., essentially probably the same metric as the confidence metric, because that actually seems to work fairly well. Um, if they don't restrict it to that level, I think what we might get is I would not be shocked if a few years from now we get some kind of article piece about there being this mass ring of money laundering that happens on Steam via these games. That's kind of my end note on that.
And just to make an end note on theme with the episode, the $100 question, just a yes or no will do, because I think we've gone on with the pros and cons of these throughout the rest of the episode. Do you think Valve should raise the fee for games being posted to Steam, yes or no?
No.
No, I agree. What are your thoughts, though, is the main question. Please do let us know in the comments below. We are going to be starting from next week a new section of the podcast called Comment Comeback, where we will be picking comments across our Steam forums, our Steam announcements, our Discord server, and also the YouTube comments here, where we'll be looking at comments that you guys have made after we've done our brief introduction and just layback chat at the beginning. And addressing some of the comments that you make. So if there is something that you feel quite strong about in this episode, or you want to raise your opinion on any of the topics that we've raised, please do let us know down below, and you might get featured in the next episode next week. I would like to thank both Ratchet, who isn't here with us anymore. I say that like he's died. He is not. He is alive and well, I hope. And SVD for joining me here today. Please do like and subscribe if you want to see more of these. I hope that we've got the audio issues that we had last week. I know that some of you were commenting that some of the audio levels were a little bit too low. We have bumped them up this week. I hope that these have been resolved. If not, really promise that it'll be solved next week. Another thing I want to highlight, we have links in our description. We have a link to our link tree, which has all of our social medias. We've got Sentinels at the store, Steam group, Discord server, X platform, Blue Sky, and more. And we also have a Patreon where you can become a patron today. We will have a link, we will have a link to our Patreon in the description down below, and we will also have a list of our patrons in the description below.
Shout out to Steam Gifts. We love you. We love the Steam Gifts community because they are not like certain people. r/Steam. What?
Yes. We had a chat after literally as soon as we all stopped the recording last week. SVD mentioned, we should have given a shout out to Steam Gifts, because I kind of went on a bit of a mini tirade against the Steam subreddit. But the Steam Gifts community are absolutely fantastic. Their moderation team are so friendly, so communicative, and very, very fair and balanced. Not like my experience has been with our Steam. So yes, massive shout out to Steam Gifts. In fact, as well, I will leave a link to Steam Gifts in the description as well. I'll make a note of it now so I don't forget. They are a fantastic website. They're a very, very welcoming community. They're all about giving away free Steam gifts, but genuinely, they run raffles where hundreds or thousands of users can enter, and you might be in a chance to win, a very small chance admittedly, but you might be in a chance to win a Steam game that you've been after, that someone is just looking to give away for free with no strings attached. And they've also got a very, very welcoming community and forum board as well, with loads of interesting discussions happening on the daily. Thank you, SVD, for raising that. So once again, I've been Mellow, that's been SVD. Ratchet was also here for a short while. And we will see you next week. Take care.
Take care now.